everybody can click OK. And Stephanie, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself first, or you want me to do it first?
Sure. So I'm Stephanie Jones. I'm the fair director for the Northwest Science Expo, which is the state science fair, and it has 5th through 12th grade students attending.
All right, and I'm Steve Scannell, and I am the K-12 science instructional coach for the Gresham-Barlow School District. And I'm also the Gresham-Barlow STEM Expo director. Used to be the Science Expo, but we upgraded to be more inclusive and expansive with the STEM Expo. And we are the state at-large science fair for the Northwest Science Expo system. And so any students at the high school level who do not have their own fair to go to can come to our fair. And then also, if we have students who come from different regions and they want to work together, they will come and compete in our fair. And I will just say that I've been involved with this program since 2010. And my overall view is, for my 30 years of teaching, and certainly the last 10 years of doing science fair, there's been a big push about how do we engage students in doing authentic science and engineering and computer science and mathematics and applying their learning, and how do we raise the level of opportunities for kids. And there's all of these program things that are going on and heavy lifts. And the science fair system is the most accessible program that's available for the least amount of effort. It just takes an effort and some paying attention to the rules. And the possibility is that with an adult sponsor, that a student can develop a project and they can get national/international recognition by going to ISEF, which is the International Science and Engineering Fair, on an all-expense paid trip. And that's built into the system. So it truly is a fundamentally wonderful program. It's just enough of a different thing that it's a bit of you just have to be intentional about making it happen. And Megan, your thoughts about the teacher end is really important, because with the right supports, teachers can do it without it being overwhelming. But if you just tell teachers to do it, it's too overwhelming. So having you all here is really wonderful. And Stephanie, it looks like you're running the slide. So I'll just say the big goals here is really to increase the academic achievement of students in STEM. We want to engage students in authentic learning experiences, increase student knowledge, skills, and engagement in STEM. And computer science is part of that. Engineering is part of that. Technology is part of that. Social science is part of that. It's a really expansive view of STEM. Medical is often not thought of as STEM, but medical fits in this as well. And students get to participate at their level and answer their questions. And so it is totally a student-centered endeavor. And it really, the range of projects can be from a student who is doing something in their backyard to somebody who's doing, we've had students who've done nuclear research at Reed College nuclear reactors, and certainly people down at Portland State and other areas in a research lab. So it's a full spectrum opportunity for kids.
I kind of feel like you keep going to the next slide before I get to it for you. So,
so this is actually some pictures from Gresham. We've had kids doing stream research. They typically, in a classroom situation, will do kind of a class project, and then they will independently or in small groups come up with their own research question, and then that can be part of a class. It's also sometimes done totally outside of a class. So it's really up to teacher discretion on, do you want to do this as an embedded classroom activity, or do you want to do it just available for students who are interested. I would say my own personal experience is if you have a singleton class, this is a great thing to do with a singleton class because it is a project-based approach. If you're teaching 6 sections of freshman science, that's a very heavy lift if you tried to do that with every kid. But it's certainly something that you can set up as an extension opportunity for those students who want to do something extra. And depending on how you run your classroom, you can embed opportunities for kids to do things either in the classroom setting or, in the school day after school or lunchtime or something. The presentation piece here, you can see it's got the traditional, those are traditional posters. Another thing is, kids have different aspects of doing the art. And some kids love doing their own drawings and pictures and posters and things. Other kids can do a digital thing and you can print it on a large scale printer and come up with a poster.
So the high school kids qualify for the International Science and Engineering Fair. And this has been going on, well, since 1950. It is a massive event. There are documentaries that cover this. In fact, National Geographic Channel is going to have a series called Science Fair, and it's all filmed at the International Fair. So if you're looking for like a hook to kind of draw kids in, look up science for these Science Fair documentaries or the show when it comes out, because really the kids who go to this event, they are immersed in all these other kids who also are these science nerds and they get it. So it's like, they find their tribe kind of thing. And our kids have done very well at this event from Oregon. And so we've had top winners, which these are my 3 guys now who have won 50 grand from this event. And these 2, 2010 was when they won. They both now have PhDs in types of physics. So it's really get that start and it keeps them going. And then Rishab, who won it in 2022, he's now at, I want to say he's now at Harvard. He started this year and he's planning on being an MD. So they're kids who really get it. Just kind of background of the fair, we have 7 regional fairs. Well, we have 7 fairs, and one of them is a state fair. For middle school, there's going to be a list that shows which fairs accept middle school. Not all of fairs accept middle school, but each fair ranges in size from like 20 to almost 200 projects. For a regional state fair, I can get about 200 high school and 300 to 400 middle school. So that's why high school, they have to qualify through a regional fair to advance the next fair. And then each of the regional fairs get to select kids who go directly to ISEF, but they're all encouraged to come to the state fair as well, because as I say, we have more fabulous prizes available. And we do get a lot of different special awards that range from like a certificate to cash. So cash is always a great motivator for kids.
And there's scholarships, Yep. OSU and U of O provide scholarships at the different fairs.
Yeah, and U of O scholarships, pardon me, last year were $9 grand a piece and they were renewable. So it's a great opportunity for kids. For these kind of sections of the state, so the entire eastern half of the state would go to CRSC, which is based out of Central Oregon Community College. It's a virtual fair, so it'll be all online, which saves on travel expenses. You have to have the Wi-Fi available for your kids to link in. It is only high school. The western most of the state is Central Western Oregon Science Expo, and that's going to be held at Chemeketa this year. And then Steve's Fair is in the purple here. And he's also now taking middle school, but it's for the kids who are in the East Metro STEM Hub. And we're going to have the slides available to everybody, so you don't have to feel like you have to write, just kind of, go with the flow. And Portland State is where the state fair is held, and it's going to be a combined event on April 5th with all of the kids there, which is fun because I make the high school kids go and interview the middle school kids. And so that kind of adds to the middle school experience quite a bit. General rules. I think Steve was going to cover this one.
All right. So the most important thing is that kids actually have to do something. So that is either scientific inquiry or engineering design. They can't do a research project. If they do research and they get data that's available online, say, for example, they're able to get some astronomy data from the Hubble Space Telescope, and they manipulate that data in some way, then that counts as a project. But they have to manipulate data to do that. Doing a computer program, what they would want to be able to do is design a program and then have it do some things, and so they're making some sort of changes or improvements or iterations, and they're being thoughtful about doing that. So the key thing is that they have to be doing something active, not just a research project. This next bit goes to the adult sponsor. And adult sponsors, the main role of the adult sponsor is safety. And that is safety for the student, and that is safety for the rest of us in the world. So we do not want students to design some project where they're growing some mold in the bathroom and it creates something that's toxic to people and harmful. So if they're going to do some sort of experiment like that, there are rules that need to be followed. For most students, if you avoid human subjects, it's pretty straightforward with a teacher checkoff. If you're doing something like in a chemistry lab, or like I had students do for robotics, they would say design a robotic arm for their first robotic competition. And so there was some safety forms that they had to go through to identify that they paid attention to that. And as a teacher, I would sign off on that. The adult sponsor is going to sign off to say that the procedure that the students come up with is safe. And then depending on what the student chooses, there might need to be higher levels of approval. So the adult sponsor can be a classroom teacher. That's probably the most common. It can be a parent. It can be a neighbor. It could be any caring adult who is going to be thoughtful and supportive of paying attention to what the rules are, and then making sure that the student is functioning in a safe way.
Or the district STEM specialists now.
So the other tricky thing, particularly because in the traditional high school setting, I'll speak to my personal experience, is kids will do things before they would get approval. And I would say you would put, if kids are doing some preliminary experimentation and things, that's totally fine. But you really want them to have their proposal. They have to do their proposal first, that then gets approval, and then they're allowed to collect data. So it's just really important that that's the procedure that the adult sponsor is following. There's an online registration form for where the adult sponsor actually signs up first, and there's some links to, what do you have to do to be an adult sponsor and what things do you need to know. Then what the adult sponsor would do is register the student project, pick a category, and get a project number. And then they give the student the project number, and then the student then can upload things as they go along. And that online registration is required. And then, of course, Stephanie has the email there, and any questions, Stephanie is wonderful about responding in a timely manner. This list right here, just to give you a sense of the scope of categories, high school categories on the left, middle school categories on the right, they mostly overlap. There's sometimes you're not sure what category a project should be in. When you do the initial registration, just go ahead and take your best guess. We can change categories later.
Food science is one of the new ones in middle school because that was kind of a direct result of the pandemic. Kids were able to do like baking at home and changing a variable. So we added that in. Microbiology is now clumped with animal science because honestly, microbiology projects for middle school scare me badly. So if I could, I'm not quite to the point of just forbidding them, but it's they are the ones that have the ability to go drastically wrong. So
and I will say the rules for middle school and high school a little bit different, where high school students, if they're doing anything with humans, which includes doing
we got a slide for that one, Steve.
Do we have a slide for that one? All right, I'll stop. Good.
We now have 3 different types of fairs within our state. Virtual fairs is what we did during the pandemic. It's what's still functional in Bend. And that's everything is online. And so we do require a video so the judges can actually see the kid, and then they have slide deck to share their information. So like instead of a poster, virtual kids just are doing a slide deck online. The in-person are the totally standard, what everyone has in their head about a science fair. And then hybrid is something I do with state, which is I require the kids to have a slide deck online for judges to do scoring in advance so that I can make my day a little bit shorter. And then the interviews are all done in person. So we have so many really awesome volunteers who come in and talk to these kids. So it makes for a long day, but it ends up as a rewarding day. And then, here's us sharing again requirements. Online registration, everyone has to do it. It now has the ability so that you can register yourself as the adult sponsor and represent more than one school or more than one division. So when your school is K through 12, you would have your middle school division, and then you'd have your high school division. And so those would be as 2 separate ones, because that's how we track which fair you can go to and what project types, registration types are allowed. We're all online now, so you don't have to mail things unless there's a check involved. Then you would mail the check, but it's 1 stamp versus people used to have like a massive UPS envelope that cost. I had a kid mail me his forms overnight and it cost him like $30. So we avoid that now. Once you get in your first fair, if you choose or if you have kids who are selected to move on to the next fair, which is the state fair, I can do that automatically. You don't have to redo the whole process. And you're only paying for the first fair that you attend. So middle school, we do have an easier process for middle school. It's 1 page as long as they fit the middle school EZ rules. We have kind of special rules if it includes humans, vertebrate animals, or microbes. They have to do a little bit extra on that, and it has to fit exactly. Otherwise, they have to follow high school rules, because our middle school kids do qualify for a national competition where they get a week in Washington, D.C. in October. This year it was over Halloween, and I thought, well, how mean is that to do to kids? But I'm sure they still had a great time. We have had a lot of kids qualify from Oregon, which it cuts it down to 30 kids nationwide who qualify for this event. And Elizabeth was the one from this year who was just there. And she ended up winning a 2nd place and she won $2,500 scholarship to a science camp of her choice. So they really make it an exciting event, and I wish I could go sometime, but my kid's already in middle school and she's not going to be qualifying. I already know that this year. The high school, and then the kids who are middle school but don't qualify. This is one of the forms. There's 3 forms that every project has to do. Checklist for adult sponsors, the first one. These are all in online registration, and we have a series of check boxes. And if you just check the boxes and then you go to the print page after, it will print everything out on the form for you. If you are dealing with a whole lot of kids and you're like, well, maybe they're not all going and I don't want to commit to registering them yet, you can print them out and just have a blank that is available through the nwsc.org website. But it's just a lot easier if you use online registration and then click print, and it'll just have the kid's name and their title, and it'll check all the boxes that are required to be checked. Because there are some that if you turn them in without checks, you get an email that says, hey, you forgot to check this, please do so. And the other thing we've been doing for online is, if they're not going farther than state, you can waive your signature on these so that you don't have to like print it and then write your name, sign your name, and then upload that. Instead, you basically can just do a PDF print, and I will say, hey, if you registered as the adult sponsor, you knew the kid was doing the project. And so you kind of get a waive from not having to put a signature on this piece of paper. And as Steve said, that's kind of the safety one. These other two are also required for all high school projects, and they're more like the details of what the student did. And again, these are ones that you want to do through online registration, because then it all prints nicely for you and no one is having to handwrite, or I don't think anyone does typewriters anymore. So, and then the approval form 1B is where the parent and student both have to sign that. These are all ones that have to happen before they start doing actual data collection. Before the actual start of the project, because we don't count them coming up with their research plan as part of the project. And for the projects that require pre-approval, which I'm going to talk about that too, there's a spot for the approval of the committee to sign on this 1B as well. So the pre-approval projects, vertebrate animals, which include fish, which is one of those things that just doesn't seem right to me, but it's the international rules, so we have to follow it. Microbes, which kind of got classified under the potentially hazardous biological agent. So if you have the kid who's like, I want to go swab and see what bacteria I can grow from the swab, there are specific rules that have to be followed on those sorts of projects, including they must be done in a lab, whether at school or in a professional lab, because we do not want some kid growing something nasty that then can infect an entire building. Tissues, human or animal tissues or fluids, so even saliva, other body fluids, and then rDNA, which I can't even remember the last time I saw an rDNA project. The other type of approval is for if they're doing human participants, or in other words, they're doing a survey, or I want these kids to take a math test and listen to different music and see how long it takes them versus this music or the other. Those are all types of projects that require pre-approval and basically a medical or mental health professional for the IRB. So SRC, I can totally help with these two committees if you need to set them up at your school. Some of the fairs have a district-wide committee that can help do this. If you are just starting out, I highly recommend avoiding projects that are going to need pre-approval. And as the teacher, you have every right to put restrictions on your students as to what type of projects you want them doing. And yeah, middle school, check out the middle school EZ rules, because we have project types, for example, for vertebrate animals, where if it's, I'm making observations on my pet, those type of projects are allowed without going through a whole approval process. But for the high school level, even that kind of project has to get a pre-approval from a committee. And getting the biomedical scientist is often the hardest part for just a local group. If you've got some parent that is willing to help, that maybe is a veterinarian or works someplace like OHSU, those are the type of people you want to kind of pull in for that. For human subjects, like I said, even surveys, you have to have a mental health professional, which could be your school counselor, it could be your school nurse. Their job is to make sure it's safe for all humans involved. The educator, the teacher, basically can't be the teacher who's the adult sponsor, because then we get conflict. But their teacher is kind of saying, is this project something that kids can do? And then the school administrator is looking at it as, if this project were to make the newspaper or YouTube or wherever, is it going to look good for our school, or is it going to cause massive issues with all the parents who suddenly realized their kid was involved in the kind of project? So the administrator kind of has that role, but that's why all three of those people have to agree that this is a project that is safe and appropriate and doable. And here's my conflict of interest statement. Like I said, the MSEZ rules for humans, it basically says if you're just somewhere watching people do things and you're, doing like a tally sheet, that would be allowed. But if you are interacting in any way, you have to follow the high school rules. And so we've had kids that like sit at a stop sign and just are writing down how many cars run the stop sign versus legally do what they're supposed to at the stop sign. So those kind of projects do work and can happen. So if a kid is just like, I really, really want to do humans, that would be kind of the way to do it, is say, figure out something you can just watch people do without trying to influence them. So like I said, you're going to get a copy of this. Steve had Isaac, who was one of the kids from Gresham High School who qualified for the International Fair. And we didn't practice this. We just kind of were going through it. So I'm like, Steve, should we talk about this? And we're basically going to give you the link again, if you want a resource that's like, this is the student side of things. And Steve has put together a science fair handbook for his district, which would be applicable for like adapting, but he's got lots of rules in there and kind of a timeline of how you can fit things into the schedule. And then the requirements on nwsd.org, I have explicit directions for both middle school and high school teachers as to what is required to be turned in online. And for middle school, there's a slide deck there's a template that can be used, because I've tried simplifying middle school down to the point where they only have to share one link now. So there's all of that. And I also have videos kind of going through different steps of registration that can be seen by students, so that you can say, okay, I registered you. Here's your exhibit number and password. Watch this video to see what you're doing next. And then it lets the kid can log in and do it themselves, so that the teacher isn't having to log in and do all of the work for everything. Woohoo, we're racing through this. This is one of our groups that went to ISEF. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, I was just going to say, so here's some things that you, as far as individuals, what you can do to help, as far as volunteering or sponsoring students or even recruiting people to participate. And then if you're around on April 5th and you'd like to be a judge or to help out with NWSE, that's open, or even the Gresham-Barlow Fair, which is Friday, March 8th. You're more than welcome to come and be part of that. And I would just, and Megan, back to you're thinking about the teachers and the load and, oh, it's all of this stuff. And I will just say, like, that's all true. And it is a lift, and you got to be thinking about it, and you got to be flexible. And then there, there's always the pressure about getting forms done and getting them done right. And I'll just say, every year when we do this, I come away just so glad and grateful that we have this opportunity for kids. What's special about the Gresham-Barlow Fair being the at-large fair is it's about 12 different schools participate, or more than that sometimes, from around the state. And so kids get a totally different experience by seeing what people are doing around the state and different levels of projects. And they just don't get that experience in any other way. And So it truly is a life-changing event for many kids, as far as just participating and having conversations with a scientist who's like talking about their work, and they come away feeling really I don't know, empowered by just doing a project and meeting with judges and meeting with other students. Those students who win an award, scholarships, or the ISEF awardees, it's a life-changing experience for them. So Isaac actually did a lichen experiment and actually won a spot to ISEF as a junior. And he went and his eyes got opened and he was like, I see the world in a new way. I'm going to do this to my project for next year. And he actually was looking at lichen from Mount Hood all the way to the coast. And he was taking samples. He was sending them down to Oregon State, where they were doing an analysis, and they were looking at pollutants over time and location and how far from the city. And he ended up going to Oregon State and getting a bachelor's in biology from that experience, which was from here. And so we've had several students where the ISEF experience is just, it just changes them in a way that's really profound. So participation, even kids who just do a project, they come away with something that they did on their own and had a chance to share it with caring adults. And it's just really amazing. So I just thank you all for being here today and tonight, and your interest in this, and whatever we can do to support you in supporting students and teachers in your own areas to do projects, we're happy to do that. So
This photo here, this is Isaac. This young man is a homeschool student, and his younger brother also qualified for ISEF. Just, I think 2 years ago, he was there. And then I believe she went to, I think she went to Lake Oswego.
mm-hmm.
So it is, these kids really make these friendships with kids that they wouldn't have met any other way. And so that kind of is fun. And then they get to whatever university they're going to, and they just kind of keep it going and finding those people. Now that I went into a different place, but questions. And then this is another young lady who did science fair several years back and going to be a pediatric oncologist. And so it's like, these are the kind of stories where like you look at them with their little project they started with, and then where are they now? And I confess that I have done a lot of looking around on LinkedIn to find some of these kids over the years. So because I just joined it myself, and now I'm like, if I had them the entire time, I could have just tracked them the whole time. But try not to be the creepy stalker person.
All right.
So
well, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and then we'll open it up to questions.
Okay, I do have a few questions.